One of the things that made us unique was that we got to explore different kinds of Latino stories. It wasn't border stories. It wasn't drug cartel stories. We can tell myths about monsters and creatures that perhaps people don't know about South America or Mexico or Cuba or whatever.
Obviously, there is a big market out there. There's a lot of different scripts, a lot of different genres. So I would love to know, maybe starting with Gigi, just what it is that makes this unique to each of you.
Well, when I got approached, the first thing that stood out to me, I love sharing this, was the title. I knew nothing. I just got this random text from Mike being like, Satanic Hispanics, what do you think? It was like, okay, yeah, it just sounded so awesome. But also what was super intriguing about it to want to do this was there was already such a set idea of the wraparound about the traveler, bringing in all these different stories of Latin America. And I felt that this was just such a cool and different and unique idea that filmmakers like myself who have not had so many opportunities to be as authentic, that this was the project to do it. And this was the project with no borders. To me, it was like such a blessing as well. So I couldn't help but say, fuck yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I did.
I think it was the appeal, like when Mike and I first talked about it, it was the appeal of doing an all-Latino horror anthology, We have talked a lot about this, but we have largely been shut out from horror. Like none of the horror movies we grew up with had any Latinos in it. Like, maybe you can point someone out here and there, but we weren't seeing ourselves in those movies. It's getting a tiny little bit better now, but still, it's not. We don't see ourselves reflected in horror, and yet Latinos are the largest movie-going audience for horror. So what we wanted to do is to do an anthology where we could tell our stories by ourselves, take back our narrative and show our diversity behind and in front of the camera. Other than, obviously having fun with friends and all that, getting to do something that you're doing for yourself and you're going to be having fun. But I think there was this bigger purpose behind it that was always very inspiring.
We're also just looking for a lot of, a chance for representation, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I thought one of the things that made us unique was that we got to explore different kinds of Latino stories. It wasn't border stories. It wasn't drug cartel stories. We can tell myths about monsters and creatures that perhaps people don't know about South America or Mexico or Cuba or whatever. And tell a different unique point of view of what it means to be, what a Latin story is. And so that was really exciting. And then, of course, obviously to work with very talented filmmakers you admire is always a joy. So
there's obviously several different segments that make up this anthology. So did you guys all kind of collaborate and direct all of them together, or did you decide to split it up?
It's a split up thing. Basically, myself and Alejandro kind of got the ball rolling as far as the idea of like, hey, we want to do an all Latino anthology. And then we kind of set the parameters of, okay, let's make it about myths and legends of Latin America. And then from there, it was just we approached the filmmakers that were our friends whose work we admired and felt that would be a good fit for the team. So Alejandro started by reaching out to Ed Sanchez, and I reached out to Gigi, and we went from there. So
then we had to hand down Demian Ruña and bully him into being here because he was very busy. But I'm happy we did that.
It was important to get different filmmakers from all of Latin America. We have Gigi from Mexico, Ed and Alejandro from Cuba. My heritage is from El Salvador. And then we also wanted we need South America. So Demian being from Argentina seemed like a natural fit.
We wanted to show how diverse Latinos are, because here when you mention Latinos, people are thinking Mexicans, and That's great, but we're way more than only Mexico, you know? We're a whole continent. We're very different. We have a lot of things in common too, and we wanted to show that. And also we wanted to show, to bring filmmakers that would show the whole Latino experience, because we have first generation Americans like Mike. We have some that immigrated here or to Canada, like Gigi, Eduardo, and myself. In the case of Eduardo, he came to the US when he was 6 years old, I think. I came here 10 years ago. But we also wanted to show stuff from filmmakers that also lived in Latin America. And that's why we looked for Demian, because his film Terrified, like, we love him, and we love the film. We love what a great filmmaker he is, and what that brought to the diversity that we wanted to show in the film.
Well, there's also more than one genre kind of mixed in here. It is a horror, but I thought the chapter 3 especially had some humorous aspects as well. Did you guys want each story to be a bit tonally different, or were there certain unique qualities you wanted each one to have that stood out?
Which one is 3? Vampiro is 3?
We wanted the filmmaker to express their voice, you know, whatever they wanted to do, because that is kind of the challenge. These are low budget independent shorts. It's not like here's a huge check to come do our film. You know, the appeal for any filmmaker to do this is strictly, autonomy to do your short and do whatever you want. So we set certain parameters of it. It should be about Latin America. It should be about some sort of creature or things like that. But other than that, we truly, genuinely admire every filmmaker that's a part of this. And we want to hear that filmmaker's voice, and we want to see that filmmaker do their thing because we're fans.
Also, I think part of the different tones and different genres also speak about the diversity that I was mentioning earlier, because you can see in the different segments how it reflects our background. Like Gigi from Mexico does the bloodiest one, because they have a special relationship with violence and death. Eduardo and I did something more humorous because we're Cubans, and that's the way that we have found to deal with everything that has happened in Cuba for the last 6 decades. And I think the tone of each story also reflects who we are as filmmakers and our nationalities.
Something that's really fun is that I think all of us also challenged ourselves to do something different from our usual. Or even, and if not different, go even harder with some of the choices, to be a lot more bold, more unapologetic with this anthology too. So it's been really cool to see everybody's work, that we all know each other's work, but it was so neat to see what it means to have that freedom to just create, because we don't get that enough. So that's where the true authentic stories come from.
When you guys were putting all of these together, then did you ever kind of run into the challenge of, we need to add something to this chapter, but we don't want to take that time away from another story? Is that something that came up a lot?
Not really, because we try to set certain parameters right at the top. So it's like, okay, these are the things that hopefully, we're looking for, down to like shoot it in a 2:3:5 aspect ratio so that they're hopefully all uniform, make it about something that is a Latin theme, make it, hopefully with a creature. And so also just us as filmmakers, we have kind of a connection as far as that we admire each other's work, because we kind of do, I don't want to say similar stuff, but we're all kind of working in the same, voice. We all like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez and John Carpenter and Guillermo del Toro. Like, we have a lot of the same influences. So, I think that kind of helped kind of form it. And again, like I said before, like filmmaker autonomy is super important to us. So it was a matter of like trusting your filmmaker and trusting that they were going to do a good job. But again, they were good people and they were good filmmakers. So thankfully that all came through. So
what about the effects you guys used here? Because a lot of it looked like they could have been practical, but were you using, I'm sure you had a VFX supervisor as well.
Most of it was.
We can't afford it. Yeah. No, we don't have budgets for anything like that. I think, again, and I'll let everyone else speak about their segments individually, but I think that's one of the things that brings us as a collective, is that we love horror and we love the same type of stuff. And it was, we get that a lot about the practical effects. It was never a conversation. It was never, hey, really do some practical effects, don't do the CG things. It's just, I think all of us intuitively know that practical effects are better. So that's kind of why we did it and why it is all that. But Gigi, if you want to talk about your effects, or, you know, what drew you to them?
I just think practical looks so much cooler. I think you could like feel the texture so much more than, I don't have nothing against CG and VFX. I think it's awesome, but I think in genre, when you go back to like old school filmmaking and horror, everything just, there's such a grind to things that you can like touch and feel. So I think, you know, with budgets like the ones that we had, when you're limited, it really challenges you to be super smart as to what is worth it, what is worth putting that practical effect, that effort into. That's something I love with all of us that come from the indie world, that we have to be super creative on what's going to be earned and what's going to be satisfying for that one or two set piece that has that practical effect. In my case, you know, I left it to towards the end of my segment, when the shape shifting begins of these characters of the folklore. Also, I always ask myself, what's going to make my mom very uncomfortable? And that's the answer of what to put the practical effects on. I can answer that. That's definitely what's going to be.
I'm more like, okay, what am I going to keep?
What are you going to keep? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, what problem am I keeping from this? And so, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like it is time for me to wrap. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me about your film. You guys are all so lovely to talk to.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you guys.